So first of all, we wanted to thank you, Faris, and welcome you to this interview. And thank you for taking the time. And the very first thing that we would like to ask you is if you can introduce yourself in a few sentences.
I'm Faris Halabi from Lebanon, actually from a small village from the south, but I've lived in Beirut during the last 10 years. I've studied business and law in Lebanon, and then I'm here as a student in the MIA program. I've worked as a researcher and campaigner for many years with many NGOs, local in Lebanon and sometimes in Istanbul and Paris.
All right.
All right, then moving on to the topic of the interview, which is the Lebanon Revolution, would like you to tell us a little bit, in a sense of a timeline, from October more or less when things starts to heat up, through COVID and the explosion, how the things evolve.
It started on 17 October, as everyone knows. I was in Beirut and I joined the movement at 7 or 8 p.m. and for the first time, because I've been in the streets for like 10 years from 2011 and 2013 and 2014 and even in the 2015 protest. And for the first time since I've joined the protest from since 2011 during 2013 and 2015 protest, for the first time I saw new faces during the protest, as well as this kind of outrage when I saw the people there. So I knew that something will happen, and that's how it started, the revolution.
Was it much bigger than, for example, the protest in 2015?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
And even after 17 October, for months, we witnessed a lot of protests in Beirut and all the other cities. And we had like thousands of Lebanese and even the diaspora Lebanese, they had their own protests in Geneva and Paris and Latin America and everywhere.
How would you describe the revolution in a term? Would you say, well, is it a revolution or is it a revolt or?
I mean, actually, there was a huge debate about this topic, especially during the first weeks of the revolution. Sometimes they said that there was a uprising, not a revolution, or they used the term Hirak, and Hirak was used in 2015 in Lebanon. Hirak is a Lebanese term. It refers like a uprising more than a revolution, and it was used last year in Algeria. But for me, it was a revolution, and I always say it's a revolution. I don't care about the term, I just care about what happened, and for me, yeah, what happened is a revolution.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, right.
All right, so following on that line, what would you say that were the aims of the protesters, and especially what problems did they face? We know that there were taxes, for instance, on WhatsApp calls, and that seemed to spark it all, but I'm pretty sure this comes from way, way before. So just the fuel or the key elements that really people were aiming for and that they were disenchanted with the regime.
Actually, Lebanese people, they waited for this moment. Everyone knows that, okay, there was a taxation on WhatsApp calls and other things, but no, it's they wanted this kind of revolution. We had, before the revolution, we had many protests in 2019 and in 2018 and in 2015, but there was no media coverage. So that's why everyone was talking about the revolution. And the thing, yeah, the aims or the objectives or the of the revolution was to stop corruption offshore, and then there was a slogan, recover the stolen money. Yeah, that was stolen from Lebanon and transferred outside the country. And the last thing is what was to hold nearly elections. Yeah, that's it. And there was the biggest slogan, كلٌ يعني كلٌ, which means all means all. And by this slogan, we wanted them to leave, all of them to leave, and I mean the ruling class, the Lebanese ruling class.
Okay. When Hariri resigns, how did that make you feel, and how did that kind of How do
Was
I
that a
say this?
catalyzer?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I can take it from here.
Yeah.
When Hariri resigned after 2 weeks of the revolution, we felt like we achieved the first goal of the revolution, and we wanted to form our own government that we have like a technocrat or a specialist in the cabinet more than politicians, the traditional politicians.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Understand.
So in that sense, could you say that the people what was the demography of the people or the demographics of the people that were taking part in the protest? Were they young people, old people, men, women? What was it sort of composed of?
For the demographic question, I guess all the Lebanese joined the revolution inside the country and the diaspora, as I mentioned before. But the thing that, there was 2 points to focus on regarding this question: the young generation and the women participation. And women especially have been in front lines to prevent clashes between the security forces and the protesters. Yeah, so and from the first moment of the revolution, from 17 October.
All right, that's really interesting. And were there also a lot of old people, would you say? Like elderly, more than 60 years old, for example?
I mean, I cannot say there were old people or not, but there were from all classes,
ages and
from all ages.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Picking it up on the media coverage that you were talking about before, communication today, it plays a very important role, and I'm pretty sure it did in the from October 17th onwards. But it seems that the revolution, or the Lebanese revolution, is a little bit dying out in the Western media. Do you think this is actually because the revolution is also dying out, or because the Western media focus has shifted to other things?
Yeah, actually after mid-March, no protests took place in Beirut or other cities, and that's why the local media channels and of course the Western stopped covering the Lebanese revolution. But during the first month, for weeks, all the media, local, regional, and international, they were covering the revolution 24/7. Yeah, because it was the biggest event in the Middle East, and they waited for their results, and that's it.
Yeah, and would you say that although the protests since March have kind of decreased, is the spirit for change still there?
I mean, it was more related to COVID.
Yeah.
So, but then the explosion happened on 4 August, and after that we mobilized to clean the streets and in Beirut, especially in Marmkhail and Gemmaisi, for 2 or 3 days. I'm saying we activists, and we had a huge protest on Saturday, 8 August, but we were attacked by the army and the police security.
And that had not happened before that?
Yeah, I mean, it happened, but it was much more aggressive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now that you've brought up the army issue and the fact that they were pushing back against protesters, do you think that the army is one of those elements of power defending the elite that still needs to switch sides and, push?
Join the protest.
Exactly.
Actually, for the army, we know that the army will support the regime, so we wouldn't actually believe in the army, or if we didn't believe in the army as something that will help the revolution. So
we saw that you were involved in a lot of interviews and that you were talking a lot during the protests while they were happening in Lebanon. So we were just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about why they contacted you, or why you were a spokesperson.
As I was working as a researcher and activist at the same time, so I was invited by local media channels and regional media channels to talk about the revolution, and mainly about during the first weeks of the revolution, about the future steps, because we used to have meetings every day, and then we decide what the other steps that we'll do, and For example, next day we have in Beirut or other cities. So I was invited to talk about these issues, and the other thing to cover the situation in Lebanon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and from general perspective and as researcher. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
The interview would like to ask you about your thoughts about the future in terms of the revolution, not only the revolution but the country itself, Lebanon, and if you see any similarities with any previous events that have happened, whereas in the last decade or in the last 20, 40, 50 years.
Here, yeah, what happened in Lebanon, it's part of what took place in the Arab region from Tunisia to Syria to Yemen to everywhere. And yeah, what we saw in Lebanon, it's something similar, and the revolutions, of course, they are the same, even if the place or the country isn't, they're not the same, but yeah, the revolutions, the revolution in Lebanon was similar to what happened in Syria and in Egypt and everywhere in the Arab region.
All right.
So, where do you see the country in 10 years, 20 years from now?
What's your hope for the country?
Exactly.
Maybe
what you see.
I mean, in Lebanon, you cannot predict something for the next day.
Where would you like it to be? We could pose it this way.
Where would I?
If you had the chance to be like, okay, this is Lebanon in 2030.
I mean,
just a few elements.
Lebanon in 2030, I guess, I hope that we have the capacity to change the regime, to have good economics, to have a good service as public health, public education, and yeah, that's it as a summary, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what are your plans for after graduation here at the Graduate Institute?
I was working on topics during the last months related to revolutions and counter-revolutions in the Middle East. And after graduation, I would like to continue working on these topics. So yeah, that's the plan, but we'll see what will happen, of course.
All right. Are you specializing in global security?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
That makes sense.
Thanks for the invitation, and thanks for the team.
Yeah, thanks, Fares, for taking the time to come and talk to us.